She let him pull the trigger. The gun had been in the drawer for 3 years, wrapped in his father's old chamois cloth. It was a Smith & Wesson .38, cold and heavy, with a grip worn smooth from years of use. Thomas had never fired it. He kept it because his father had, and because there was a strange comfort in owning something so final, even if he never planned to use it. Deep down, he liked knowing it was there, just in case life ever left him with no other option. He had not intended to use it that evening. Their argument began the way it always did, over something small, a plate left in the sink, a comment about his mother, or just the weight of 15 years of resentment spilling out over whatever was nearby. But Margaret was different that night. She stood in the kitchen with her back to the window, autumn light on her face, and said things she'd never said before. Her words were sharp, hitting every vulnerable spot he had tried to protect. "You're a ghost in your own life, Thomas. You haunt this house like you're already dead." He went to the drawer. He didn't think about it. He just went, as if something inside him had been pulling him there for years. When he came back, the gun was in his hand. Margaret was still standing there, her face showing something he couldn't read, part contempt, part pity, and, though he wouldn't realize it until later, a calm that was almost patient. He didn't notice then that the gun felt wrong in his hand, lighter than it should have been, as if it wasn't the loaded weapon he thought it was. "Do it," she said. He didn't. He lowered the gun, tossed it onto the sofa, and walked out into the cold November air. He walked for 2 hours along the river path, his hands shaking so much he had to shove them into his coat pockets to steady them. By the time he came back, he had already begun to tell himself the story of what he might have done. When he returned, the house was dark. He called her name in the kitchen, at the bottom of the stairs, and in the bedroom where her reading glasses were folded on the nightstand. The gun was still on the sofa. On the cushion next to it was a single dark hair. It could have been hers, or maybe it was just a trick of the streetlight coming through the window. For the first time, he wondered whether she had ever left the room at all. He called her phone. It rang in the kitchen, where she'd left it on the counter. He told himself she had gone to her sister's in the city, like she sometimes did after their worst fights. She would come back in the morning with coffee, and a cold silence that lasted 3 days, just like always. But morning came, and she didn't return. He stood in the kitchen and stared at the gun, and tried to remember exactly what had happened after he left the room. Did he hear a shot? He thought he might have. A distant crack as he walked by the river. But maybe it was just a car backfiring, a branch, or his own heartbeat. He searched the living room as if looking for proof he was innocent. He ran his hands over the sofa cushions, the carpet, the walls. He found only dust and the faint scent of her perfume, floral and sharp, the one she'd worn since their wedding. Nothing told him whether she was gone, or only gone from sight, and nothing told him whether his memory was a fact or a fear. He didn't call the police. He told himself it was because he was sure she'd come back. But late on the second night, sitting in the dark living room with the gun on the coffee table, he realized the truth. He was afraid of what he might have done in a burst of anger, a moment so quick and intense it left no memory, just a blank space where something awful could have happened. He feared not only what he had done, but what it would mean if his anger was stronger than his control. By the third day, he was certain. He built the story in his mind with the care of a prosecutor making a case against someone he already knew was guilty. He remembered loading the gun months ago, after a break-in on their street. She had provoked him. She stood there, daring him, and in his weakest moment he had pulled the trigger. Somehow, the sound was muffled. The body, he couldn't even call it Margaret, had been disposed of in a way his mind had blocked out. He needed the story to make sense of the shame he could not bear. Or so he told himself, because the story felt more solid than the silence. He had cleaned. The house was immaculate, which was evidence. He stopped eating. He slept on the sofa, where he could watch the gun and the spot on the carpet where he was more and more sure she had fallen. He started to hear her in the house, not in a dramatic, ghostly way, but in the quiet, everyday way of memory. Her footsteps on the stairs, the creak of the bathroom door. He would wake at night, sure she was standing in the doorway, but the hall was always empty. On the 7th day, he went to the bridge where they used to walk early in their marriage, before silence grew too heavy between them. He looked down at the dark water and tried to picture himself jumping. It felt like the ending his story deserved, but he couldn't do it. He stood there for an hour, gripping the cold railing, and when he finally walked away, it was with a defeat he couldn't describe. He wasn't brave enough to die or to live. He drank. Not in excess, not in a dramatic way, but steadily. A glass of whiskey became 3, then most of a bottle. He found that alcohol didn't numb his guilt. It made it sharper, more focused. He would sit in the living room with the bottle and the gun and talk to her. He apologized. He explained. He begged her to tell him where she was, so he could at least give her a proper burial, so he could offer the universe that small mercy in return for what he'd done. "I didn't mean to," he'd whisper to the empty room. "You have to know I loved you, even when I couldn't show it, even when I didn't know how." On the 14th day, he found the letter. It was in the drawer, folded under the chamois cloth, a single sheet of cream paper in her handwriting, the elegant slanted script he used to find beautiful. He had opened that drawer many times. The letter hadn't been there before, but now it was, and he read it with trembling hands, like a man reading his own death sentence. "We've done exactly as I predicted. You've convinced yourself you killed me, and you've begun the slow work of destroying yourself with that belief. I'm writing to tell you that you didn't. I'm alive. I'm far from here, and I am free. You were not a violent man. That was never your sin. Your sin was indifference, a slow, creeping neglect that wore away at me like water at stone, until there was nothing left but the hollow shape of what I'd once been. You didn't hit me. You didn't scream at me. You simply stopped seeing me. I became furniture. I became background. I became the thing that made your dinner and sat across from you at breakfast without either of us bothering to speak. I remember the exact moment I understood it was over. We were at your colleague's retirement dinner, November, 4 years ago, and someone asked how we'd met, and you told the story beautifully, all the right details, and I watched you and thought, he tells that story as if it happened to someone else, like I'm a character in it, not the person sitting beside him. I went to the bathroom and stood at the sink for a long time, and when I came back out, I had already, in some important way, left. I tried to leave properly. 3 times I packed my bags, and 3 times you convinced me to stay, with promises you never intended to keep. You were so good at that, so good at making me feel guilty for wanting more than you were willing to give. So I stopped trying to leave. I became what you'd always treated me as, invisible. I planned, I saved, I created a new life, piece by piece, until I was ready to disappear completely. And then I waited for the right moment. That evening, I pushed you further than I ever had. I said things I didn't entirely mean, because I needed you to reach for the gun. I needed you to believe, in the moment of your greatest rage, that you were capable of killing me. Because I knew, Thomas. I knew you wouldn't pull the trigger. But I also knew you'd spend a long time believing you had. I left you only the shape of guilt, not a body, because I needed the ambiguity to do the work. The gun was never loaded. I removed the bullets months ago. There was no shot. There was no blood. There was only your guilt, which I've always known to be the most powerful force in your life. You are a man destroyed not by what he has done, but by what he believes he has done. That is why this worked on you. I'm not proud of this. I am not cruel by nature, though you may think so now. I'm simply a woman who spent 15 years disappearing in plain sight, and who decided, finally, to disappear on her own terms. I loved you once, Thomas. I loved you so much, I gave you the best years of my life, and you spent them looking through me as if I were glass. This is my revenge, but it is also my liberation. Do not look for me. Margaret. He read it 3 times. Then he folded it, placed it back beneath the chamois cloth, and sat on the edge of the bed where she had slept for 15 years. She was alive. Knowing she was alive didn't bring the relief he thought it would. Instead, it left him feeling dizzy and unreal, as if the ground had vanished beneath him. She was alive, and she had planned this carefully, with a patience he couldn't understand. She had watched him drink, starve, and talk to her ghost, and she had done nothing to stop it. She was alive, but the meaning of what he had done, or believed he had done, still would not settle. And yet. He kept returning to the detail from her letter, the retirement dinner, 4 years ago. He remembered it. He remembered telling the story, the table laughing, and then, with a sudden sick feeling, he realized he hadn't looked at Margaret once while he spoke. He had looked at the table, the other guests, and his own hands. He told the story of how they met without ever looking at her. He went back to work because the bills she'd left paid wouldn't stay paid, and he moved through his days with the careful mechanical precision of a man who has forgotten how to want anything. By evening, the house felt empty in a way he could not name, but something had shifted. His guilt was no longer about the murder he hadn't committed. It was about something else, the slow, steady hurt of all the times he looked away. That guilt was worse because it was real. He had earned it, and no letter could take it away. He could no longer pretend the worst thing in his life had been imagined. He sold the house in the spring and moved to a smaller apartment with no history. He brought the gun and the letter, placing them together in a drawer. Sometimes, late at night, he would take out the letter, read the part about the retirement dinner, and sit with it until the feeling faded. He never tried to find her. He knew this was part of her plan, the final detail, knowing she was out there, alive, becoming someone new, and never knowing who she was. She had freed him from the guilt of murder, but left him with the guilt of neglect, and that was worse because it never ended. There was no crime to confess, no punishment to bring it to a close. He wrote, not for anyone, just for himself, and what he wrote was not about Margaret specifically, but about the way people failed to see each other, the way love turned into habit, the way the closest relationships could become the most distant. Sometimes he saw a woman on the street with the same posture, the same way of holding her head, and his chest would tighten. He would follow her for half a block until she turned or went into a building. Then he'd stand on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, feeling the old pain come and go, lost again. Every year, on the anniversary of her disappearance, he took the gun from the drawer and held it. He remembered that night in the kitchen, the fear, the rage, the grief that made him reach for it. He remembered the weeks he believed he'd killed her, the letter, and the one detail that hurt most. A retirement dinner, 4 years ago, a story told to strangers, and a wife he never looked at, once. He placed the gun back in the drawer. He closed it. She had crafted her revenge with careful precision, and she had done it too well. It lasted longer than her anger, longer than his despair, longer than the marriage it was meant to end. In the end, it wasn't a weapon anymore, but a place he lived in so fully that he couldn't imagine life outside it. In his last years, he didn't think of her with sharp pain, but with a dull ache, like a limb lost so long ago that its absence felt like part of him. He wondered if she ever thought of him, or if she knew that her revenge had become, for him, a kind of devotion, the only thing he had left. Snow was falling softly outside. The gun was in the drawer, the letter was beneath it. When they found him, they also found the notebooks, years of them, and shook their heads at the waste, at a man who destroyed himself over a crime he hadn't committed. They couldn't know, and he could never have explained, that the real crime wasn't what they thought. The guilt he carried wasn't for killing his wife, but for killing her love, which was a slower and more certain death. He knew, from the moment he read her letter, that no forgiveness was coming. Somewhere, in a city where the sun shone more often, a woman who was once Margaret moved through her days with the careful grace of someone who had earned her freedom at a cost she chose not to regret. She didn't think of him often, but sometimes, at a dinner party, when someone asked a couple how they met, and the husband looked at his wife as he told the story, she would feel something inside her she couldn't name. It wasn't quite grief. It wasn't satisfying either. She noticed the way his eyes found his wife's, the small, involuntary smile, the way the wife leaned slightly towards him as if pulled by something she didn't realise. And Margaret, whoever she was now, would look away. The sun shone. She walked on. Somewhere in a drawer that no longer existed, a gun lay wrapped in chamois cloth, heavy with bullets that had never been fired and a gilt that had never needed them.